Okay, so formally welcoming you all into the room and into Voice Your Brilliance. Now, a very quick heads up about why I use that terminology. We often think of ourselves as, is it about public speaking? What is this about? And so this is not your typical public speaking uh, public speaking webinar or masterclass. This is something where I do a deep dive into a couple of elements, what I call signature speaking shifts that can help you speak up and stand out. So that's why I've called it what I have, Voice Your Brilliance, instead of, Public Speaking 101. And a little bit about my background. Some of you know me, some of you know me quite well. Some of you are being introduced to me and my work perhaps for the very first time today. My background actually is the world of theatre. I have worked hand in hand with both the world of theatre and also corporate world over many, many years. And to me, it's like two strands of my DNA. They literally have just woven together over the years in a way where I bring theatrical expertise. I've actually worked in the theatre for over 40 years. I've worked as a professional actor, choreographer, director. I've directed shows such as Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables a couple of times because I loved it so much the first time, Sound of Music, West Side Story, some really big shows. And it's taught me a lot about leadership and how I lead first and foremost with my voice. And that's some of the things that I want to share with you today. So when I stepped into the corporate world, a lot of that expertise that I brought through is all around how we present ourselves. How do we speak out? How do we, particularly as women leaders, how do we stand out? How do we use our voice to be the change that we most need to see in the world? So a lot of the work that I do is with women leaders, helping them to amplify their voices in whatever room and on whatever stage they find themselves. And if you want to know a little bit more about my background, you can find me at simonedehas.com. You can find out a little bit more about what I do and the things and how I work with women leaders in particular. So as I mentioned earlier, this is not a webinar on public speaking, although I'm going to touch on some of those particular elements. I want you to think of this as a very a short, sharp and focused dive into aspects of how you use your voice as a leader. And I want you to think of this essentially as a rehearsal room for your voice, because for most of us, our voice isn't just how we speak, it's how we lead. And what I have noticed over the years that I've been working as a mentor and coach is that many women in leadership still shrink back. They soften their words, they let a moment pass them by instead of speaking up. And I know that you're here because you're ready for something more. You're ready to really own your voice and to speak up, to be clear, confident, and compelling every single time that you speak. So what I'm sharing with you today are the three, what I call signature speaking shifts, incremental yet powerful recalibrations that you can make that will transform your voice and the way you speak as a leader into something that people not only hear, but into something that people can't ignore. All right, so sound good? All right, so let's dive in. So first of all, I want to talk to you about a client of mine that I'm working with at the moment. Now, Sarah, now I've changed her name, obviously, for privacy's sake. So Sarah is brilliant. She's the CEO, a joint CEO of a company that's been going for many, many years. She's sharp, a strategic thinker, and she has incredible insights that her team need to hear. But every time she speaks up in a meeting, she tends to wrap her ideas in some form of self-deprecating humor. So she makes fun of herself. So she laughs her ideas off. So she'll make herself the punchline, for instance, or downplay the very thing that her team actually needs to hear and what makes her valuable. And when we unpacked this and when we discussed it, she explained that she thought it was just a really light-hearted and fun way to connect with her team. But what it actually did, it diluted her authority. And what happened is that the team would start to remember the joke rather than the focusing on the idea she was trying to share. And ultimately, they started to spin that joke back around to her, so that then they began to actually say that joke back to her and make fun of her rather than her making fun of herself. So it became a bit of a vicious cycle where she would use the humor, but it literally backfired on her. So I want you to think about that it's really important as women leaders that we stop making ourselves the punchline. Okay, so what you need to understand is often when we use self-deprecating humor. Now, I'm not talking about humor that is intentional, because as a professional speaker, I use humor and I might use it about myself, but I don't use it against myself. And there's a big difference with those two words. I might use the humor about myself, but not against myself. But the thing about self-deprecating humor is that it's often a shield. All right, it stops us really connecting deeply with the people that we need to reach. And what it does, it deflects attention away from us before anyone can challenge us. So we kind of like push the attention aside before people can actually challenge us. But of course, there's a cost to that. And the cost is that it shrinks the power of our presence as women who lead. And so when Sarah and I actually unpacked that, and she actually started to replace the humor with more direct language and clarity and conviction, no apology, but and no punchline, that was her, but more about what she wanted to share with the team, when she was more direct. And when she stopped shifting into that kind of apologetic frame of mind, the impact was so powerful for her. It created a real shift. And that's the kind of thing that I want to share with you today to help you experience. And that's the very first of the 3 signature shifts, is about dropping the disclaimer. So that's not only self-deprecating humor. This is disclaimers that you might use quite unknowingly, and it often is an unintentional and unconscious habit that I see happen in women leaders. So what I'd like you to actually share with me in the chat, what are some of the ways that you apologize for your presence before you even open your mouth to speak? So I'll give you one to kick off, but please feel free to share in the chat. So it might be something like, I just wanted to say. The word just is an apology. It's not direct. What else do you use? Please feel free to share with me in the chat. What is something that you use? Anyone want to share? What is one of the things that you do? You use it, Libby, you use your age against you. Well done. Thank you for that insight. Yes, exactly. So you might say something about how, you're so much older than the rest of the people in the group, or you use it as a way, again, it's a way that we deflect, isn't it? See, that's a great example. Anyone else want to be, being in the university sector, you're surrounded by young adults. Yes, and you have incredible wisdom, Libby. I know, because I have sat in a room with you and heard this wisdom. So isn't it interesting how we will use our age against us? And particularly for women, that is such an important thing. It's kind of like, again, you allow yourself to be a punchline. Okay, Danny, you often say that your situation means you're not particularly qualified in certain areas. Wow, that's a really useful insight. Yes, because it's from life experience. And let's face it, we all have that, don't we? We all have that life experience. It doesn't mean that it's not relevant. It doesn't mean that it's not credible. So yes, that's a great example. Thank you. Another example might be that where we say sorry before we say anything else. We might say, oh, sorry, look, I might be repeating what's been said already. So you're apologizing for having a voice first up. So these, and let me see, what did I miss? Alison, you tend to open with that you're not qualified or have an academic background. So straight away, you are literally cutting yourself off at the knees by saying, oh, I'm not credible, I'm not qualified, so why should you listen to me? Isn't that fascinating how we, particularly how women do that to themselves? They literally undercut themselves all the time. That's such a great example. They're all great examples. Carrie, a reflection that you diminishing or not claiming or naming myself, not qualified or not known. That seems to be a bit of a common theme here today. That's really fascinating. And thank you all so much for sharing your examples. You can see how when we opened with that, where does it leave us? Where, as leaders, we have nowhere to go because we've already told everybody in the room that there's no reason for them to listen to us. So my first shift for you all is to drop the disclaimer. Okay, so your disclaimer can be like, we've had some great examples. So I want you to shift from a disclaimer to owning your authority, no matter where it originated, whether it's your, the lived experience or whatever, wherever it has come and whatever age you are. So these are some of the ones that I've heard, and these are some of the ones that I encourage all of you to consider. So if you tend to say things like, this might sound silly, but here's an idea worth considering as a more authoritative, more grounded, more present way of saying what it is that you want to say. Another great example, I'm not sure if this is right, but, and you'll see that almost all of these disclaimers have the word but in them. So in other words, you're hedging your bets. Instead, you can speak directly, be clear, be confident, own your words, have that conviction. I recommend we is the way that you could turn that on its head. Another one, I just wanted to say, the word just again. We use it all the time and it softens our presence. We think that it softens something that maybe we need to be more direct with. I'd like to add is a really good way. Instead of saying, I just wanted to say, instead, your authoritative tone would be, I'd like to add. Another one. So we've spoken about your go-to disclaimers. Some of you have shared that, which is awesome. So how would you rewrite your go-to disclaimer? Anyone want to give me an example of that? How would you rewrite when you say, I don't have the university qualification? How would you write that? Anyone want to give an example? It may not be important. Yes, that's another great example, Karen. Thank you. Anyone want to have a stab at how you might rewrite not having, or rather, undercutting yourself? Life qualifies me to be here with you. This has been a huge learning journey. I love them. Yes, thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Danny. Yes. You might also say something about my years of experience have taught me, or my years of experience have shown me that. So again, you're building on your experience. Experience has, yes, perfect, Karen. Yes, exactly. So the word experience, that is your authority. That is where you have come from. So why would you not use that? Excellent. There are some excellent suggestions there. Thank you. So I want you to remember that when we use disclaimers, basically those apologies, they shrink us. They shrink our presence. They make us smaller than. Okay, and whereas when we step into our authority, when we step into that conviction and clarity, that expands our presence. So I want you to realize authority is not about being louder. Okay, and the word authority, sometimes we have a little bit of a, ooh, am I an authority? Of course you are. You would not be here in this masterclass with me if you weren't already an authority at what you deliver or what you share with the world. What you want today is to learn how to be even better at doing that. So authority is literally that you have authored your experience. And it's not about being louder. It's about your conviction around what it is that you share and the clarity. I want you to think of it maybe in this way. Think of it as your voice is a stage. And when you start with a disclaimer like, oh, sorry, I might be wrong, or sorry, I've heard this so often from professional speakers, no less, sorry to take up so much of your time. Hello, you're not taking anything from people. They want to be in the room with you. So, where we start with that kind of an apology, what does the audience think of us? So, as I said, think of your voice like the stage. And when you start with a sorry or some kind of an apology or the disclaimer, think of it as you're already pulling the stage curtains half closed before the audience has even got a chance to fully look at you, to fully experience you, to be in your presence. And you've dimmed the lights on yourself, to continue my theatrical metaphor, because that's what I love to do. You've already dimmed the lights on yourself before your message even has a chance to shine. Now, when you contrast that with authority is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the clearest about your message. And when you speak with that kind of clarity and conviction, you expand the space, not just your own heart space, but you expand the space around you. You step into your presence. You step into that expansion. So you hold the room when you step into that authority of your experience. You hold the room, and not by force, but by presence. One of my favorite sayings, and if you're taking notes, you might like to write this down and stick it on a screen somewhere near where you work every day. And this is, how you hold yourself holds the room. I want you to think about that for a moment. How you hold yourself holds the room. So if you hold yourself with authority, and I just got goosebumps from head to toe when I said that. And when you hold yourself with authority, that's how you hold the energy of the room. People will lean in, they will listen, they will notice you. And this is so incredibly important for women who lead. And also, now I want to have a bit of an adjunct to this, and this is probably one of the most important signature shifts that I can share with you today. This other piece is that this is particularly important for women who have to manage upwards or who lead upwards. And whether you're reporting to a board or significant stakeholders or, executive leadership, you're part of an executive leadership team, your words don't just share information, they signal your conviction and your clarity and your capacity to lead. So this is where apologies or disclaimers can be really costly for you, particularly if you're, in a career trajectory where you need to be able to manage upwards. So really think about how are you sharing your authority in those kinds of spaces? Because when you think about it, boards and stakeholders and your executive team, they don't scan only for what you're saying, but they're scanning for the conviction behind it. So they want to feel confidence in your clarity. They want to feel confidence in your message, even when the message is difficult. And, so disclaimers are not just about your style of speaking, it's also communicating how you feel about yourself. So it communicates your certainty or your conviction, particularly in those high stakes rooms. So the next time you want to say something like, sorry, this might be silly, I want you to pause and reframe, or rather rewrite that. And instead say something like, here's an idea worth considering. So I hope that you've noticed what a difference that makes when you step out of that disclaimer energy into your authority and recognize how authority expands your presence. Okay, any questions about what I've shared before I move on? I will check the chat in case there's anything you have, any questions for me. Okay, all right, let's move on to shift number 2. So the second one is all about the pause. Now you might notice I'm quite deliberate in the way that I pause. I pause for reflection. I pause to almost underline, if you like, what it is that I've just said. But the really interesting thing is that often when we speak, we ignore the concept of the pause and we rush into the next idea, the next thought, without leaving any space. So this shift is all about pausing for power. I had the great privilege of working with the CEO of a major Australian charity last year. Now, she was actually a really great off-the-cuff speaker. You give her a topic to do with the charity, and she could speak confidently. She knew her stuff, basically. But what happened, so she was really brilliant at all of that, but she struggled with the speaking in that she rushed through everything. Like, she spoke incredibly quickly. She raced through every idea, everything that she wanted to say. There was absolutely no gap in the words. She would speak really, really quickly, and I am not exaggerating. She would speak that quickly, like barely a pause for breath. She also breathed really shallowly, like she felt like she just didn't have enough air to get all her ideas across. And so what would happen is that her team often remarked that they felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of words headed that way, and that they were being talked at rather than led. And the other thing was, she not only spoke incredibly quickly, she also spoke really, really softly. So even when I was sitting across the table from her in a coaching session, I had to really lean forward in order to hear her. And that was also from the lack of breath, from the lack of space, not only in her own energy, but essentially in her lungs. There was no breath there. And when I suggested that she actually pause intentionally, not just to gulp a little bit of air and continue on, but when I suggested that she pause, the first thing she said was that it made her feel panic, that she actually didn't know how to do that, because she thought that if she stopped talking, people would think that she'd forgotten where she was and forgotten her place. And I'm curious to know, how many of you feel the same? I would love to know. Either share in the chat or put yourself on video and hands up. Let me know. How many of you feel the same, that if you stop for a pause when you're presenting or when you're speaking to a group or a team, how many of you feel that silence is a little bit scary? I'd love to know. So either let me know in the chat. Do you feel that you lose credibility or visibility, in fact, if you stop speaking? Anyone want to share?
I think from as a mature woman, who has been speaking for a number of years, I think the pause is now accepted. The pause wasn't accepted. The pause meant you didn't know what you're talking about, especially as a woman. There would be a space that could be, oh, does she not know where she's going? Or does she not know what she's thinking? Or does she not know her topic? That sort of thing. So I think the pause is now becoming much more accepted. A much more leveled speaking tone is more accepted, whereas before, any chance of those gaps was a gap for someone to be able to throw a knife and think that you weren't on topic or authoritative enough on your topic, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a great point you make, Carrie. And I would be inclined to agree that there has certainly been a shift in the way we appreciate the pause. And of course, pauses do have to be intentional, and that's very clear, that You can feel the energy and the difference between when someone pauses because they in fact have forgotten where they're at, and the pause, which is about helping the message to land.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Karen, go for it.
My question is this. Would it be useful to perhaps use the pause strategically, or could it be used to become more self-aware because of the becoming the punchline? These are pernicious habits that I don't know about anyone else, but I have experienced. It can be rather pernicious, self-deprecating, etc. The pause to be used in a way to become more self-aware, and if it's done correctly, could it be seen not as a lack of knowledge or what have you, but maybe put people on the edge of their seat while we regroup and speak with that authority that you were speaking about before?
Yes, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. That it's strategic. It is absolutely, silence is strategic. And as you can see, like I've on the slide that I have at the moment, it's not about weakness. It is a strategy. And we can use silence to build our authority. And yes, absolutely to regroup. It might be that you desperately need a glass of water to regroup your thoughts. You know, there are, well, when I'm teaching speaking, I talk about the fact that there's about 30 different types of pauses, and most of us use maybe one or two. But there are many different ways to pause in a presentation. It can be absolutely a strategic pause to regroup. It can be a pause to let something land and to give it space, where you want to essentially underscore your message with silence. Let people, let the message land, let people kind of embrace it, let them feel it in their own energy and in their own psyche before you move on. And that's especially true if you're sharing maybe something difficult. You need to give the emotion space. You need to give maybe a challenge. Maybe you're doing a challenging presentation, a challenge that's going to challenge the people in the room. So you want to give them space. And definitely, I have used it myself strategically to regroup because I thought, well, I've gone a little bit off track there. How do I bring my presentation back to the core things that I wanted to teach? So I will, grab a glass of water, or I'll grab, I'll do something that will strategically reset my own energy for the next piece of information. So pausing can serve us really, really well as long as it's intentional. And pausing, just on an aside here, if you suffer a little bit from lots of ums and ahs when you're speaking and you're thinking, where's my next thought coming from, that kind of thing, pausing before you speak is a really great way to drop back into your body and to allow the words to come out in the way that they're meant to, as opposed to lots of filler words. So pausing is brilliant to help you stop using filler words as well.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And thank you. That was a really great reflection and observation and question. So thank you. Any other? We haven't had slides. Can you not see my slides? I'm just checking.
No, I haven't seen any.
Oh, I'm not sure why that would be. Okay, I have been sharing heaps of slides all along. Okay, well, I'm just going to continue because I won't interrupt the session. I will just continue with it, but when you get the recording, you will see the slides are there. So they are essentially my talking points anyway, so you will see all of them in the recording. So I'm sorry about that. I should have checked that you were able to. I am sharing the screen, so that is most bizarre. All right, but I will move on. All right, so let's now, you've heard me pause a number of times, so I want you to just think about that. How can you use silence as authority? And I want to ask you a question too. Are you someone who rushes through, or can you hold silence? Now, silence doesn't mean you don't have to pause for a very long time. To you, it might feel like, oh gosh, that was like far too long. But normally a pause, a strategic pause, is literally about a heartbeat or two, like 2 beats. Pause, or you're speaking. So I said the words, can you hold silence? Beat, beat. That's as long as it needs to be. So think about, are you someone who rushes through your presentation, or are you able to hold silence? And I want you to really take this on board, that silence is not empty. So silence is space. It's where the message lands and where it has room to breathe and where it resonates then for your audience. And when we have that space around our message, it gives your words weight. And just like that CEO, when we started to work together on the way she rushed through every presentation, when we actually worked on her breathing, which was one of the things that she really needed help with, she was able to start to pause, and she recognized that the pause were what gave her words weight, and it was what helped her team lean in and connect with her rather than feel like they were being spoken at. And as she said to me at the time, you know, for the first time, I actually felt like I owned the room, not just filled it with the sound of my voice. So that is something that I would like you to take on board. That is the second shift. Pause for power. Go from noise to noticing what's happening in the room. And don't fear the silence. Use it, because when you do, again, your presence expands rather than shrinks. Now, the third shift is all about stepping into your spotlight. So this is what I call shifting from competence to consonance. Now, I want to unpack that for you a little bit, because consonance is not necessarily a word everyone understands. We have heard of the word resonance. This takes it a little deeper. So resonance is about sound, absolutely. How do we sound in the room? But consonance actually comes from the Latin word consonare or consonare, which means to sound together. Think of it like an orchestra. They all make music together. They all sound together. And consonance is when your voice, your body language, and your message are all in harmony, where you bring all of that together. When what you're saying and how you're saying it align. And when that alignment happens, people don't just hear you, they feel the message in the room. And that's the power of consonance. Now, another client story, if I may. So I worked with the CFO, and she was brilliant at her job. You know, when she had to report to the board, the reports were always really polished, very accurate, very precise. But what happened, and it was one of the reasons that she came to me, was that people actually tended to tune out. She said to me, look, I think I'm actually boring. And I'm not that anybody was brave enough to say that, but basically she felt that all of her colleagues were essentially tuning out every time she got up to speak, because while they understood her message, they didn't really kind of connect to it and didn't feel it. So, you know, she was safe, she was steady, but she was forgettable. And as a woman who leads, you want to be memorable, not forgettable. And so, you know, her voice didn't have a lot of energy to it. It was very practical, very pragmatic, almost stoic, if you like. And so her voice didn't have much energy. She informed people. So she was great at informing people about what was going on, but she didn't inspire people to make change when it was needed. And so what was happening was that she essentially was hiding behind competence. You know, the competence alone, she was very competent at her job, but competence alone isn't enough. You want to create connection. And that's what the third piece is all about. Because I want to just remind you that leadership isn't just about transferring information, it's about creating connection. And, you know, we often hide behind being competent at something rather than creating the consonance, which is when your voice, your message, and your presence are all aligned. And this is how it shows up. So there's a couple of different ways I want to share how this shows up. The first is your voice. Okay, the energy in your voice. You'll notice that I'm a particularly energetic speaker. I speak with my entire body. It's not simply my voice that I'm sharing, it's my energy. It's the pacing that I use. It's how I modulate my voice. So competence can often sound quite flat, whereas consonance can bring vocal variety. So if you're sharing something with the team, and it might be, here's an example. Our revenue increased by 20%. That's kind of flat. It's a little bit boring. It's a great statistic, but it doesn't really excite people. And if you say instead, with a little bit of lift in your voice and a little bit of weight and a bit of gravitas in your voice, it's our revenue increased by 20%. And that tells a story of a strategy that's working. So you see what a difference. It's a tiny little story embedded in the end of it, but it gives lift. There's energy and there's modulation in the voice. The other way that it shows up is in your facial expression and the way that you connect with your audience. Now, I'm not simply saying smile, because, you've got to smile to be acceptable, to be personable. But this is about like smile to welcome people, smile to make people feel included. And competence can often mask emotion, whereas consonance aligns both our physicality with our message. When you want to emphasize something, take a moment, pause, let your face also show the difference. So your expression creates that consonance. And then the other way is your body, how you gesture, your actual physical presence. When we are just competent, when we are simply being competent, that can limit our movement. We can actually feel quite constrained. Whereas consonance uses gestures that are embodied, that arise out of the message that we are sharing. So think of it as a way that you embody the message, the way that you share the message, and it's a full body experience. When people are in the room with you, they experience you. They experience not only your voice, but your message, your presence, the way you gesture, your energy, the way you include them in your message. So it goes way beyond competence into consonance. And the last piece is that the second last piece is around the content, your story and how you share that. So competence delivers information, consonance weaves in story and emotion, which then makes what you're sharing real, relevant and relatable. And the final piece is how you connect. So that's all about your presence and the rapport that you build with your audience, because competence delivers at people, just like the CEO I mentioned. Competence delivers at people, whereas consonance speaks with people. It includes them. You embrace them, you bring them into your energy and you share your energy with them. And all of these ideas, the connection is what actually, think of it as the final note that makes the message stick. So all of those pieces come together to help you make your message stick. So while competence can build trust, consonance builds that resonance. It makes you real, it makes you relevant and relatable. And leadership needs both competence and consonance. You can't do one without the other. One becomes boring and you need both of those. So that's the third speaking shift. It's all about embracing that spotlight, shifting from shifting from competence to consonance. So let me just recap all of that, because I know I said it was short, sharp, and a bit of a deep dive. So in the time we have left together, I want to just very quickly just recap on what we've shared together today. So the first shift was about dropping the disclaimer. And because every apology shrinks your presence and before you've even begun. So when you stop doing that, you step into authority and your words carry weight. The second shift was pausing for power, because silence isn't empty, it's space. And when you use it, you move from rushing through things to presence. And people lean in and they don't just hear you, they notice you. And the third shift is about stepping into the spotlight. Competence gets you heard, but when your voice, your body, and your message all sound together, when there is consonance, you're not just heard, you are also felt. And that gives you authority, it gives you presence, and it gives you consonance. And that is how you voice your brilliance. So I have a minute or two left that we can open up the floor for any questions you might have. And I just see that there's a... Okay, no worries, Mim. Okay, a few of you had to leave early. I'm just catching up on some of the chats. Okay.
I've got one last question for you, Simone, if I may.
Yes, please, go for it.
Thank you. That's been lovely, and thank you. I love your theatrical background. I have one too. I guess I'd just like to ask you, if you do what I do, I'm in local government,
Yeah.
and you tend to be in a room of people that you've perhaps campaigned against, and you need to keep reminding yourself and not having imposter syndrome, for example.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so when you're speaking, they tend to want to talk over the top of you, to undermine you. You can't pause. I can use that when I'm doing speeches, that's different. But when you're in a room full of people that are used to debating you or having an opposite opinion to you, they try to talk over the top. Is there anything you can say to try and hold that presence, hold your floor, hold your own?
Yes, absolutely. And that is such a challenging situation. I totally, I'm very glad that I'm not in that. I think, and I appreciate it's a great question. So one of the things that I have done in slightly similar circumstances is, and it will depend on the room and whether you can move around. Are you able to move around in the room when that happens? No, you're kind of anchored in place. All right. So there's two things. Physically is to, as you say, you can't pause because you'll get spoken over. You can just, I'll use the just word, you can expand your energy, like literally imagine yourself like just taking up more space. So that's an energetic thing that you can do in the moment. So literally take up more space energetically. So expand your energy out and push, send that energy out through the room so that you take up more space than people believe is possible. All right. So that takes confidence and it takes courage to do that energetic expansion. The other thing is the languaging, of course, and this is where it would be using really strong and direct language is really important. And it would be not even using the words if. So you might be tempted to say, if I might just finish. That's a disclaimer.
Yes.
So instead, I will continue with my using like I, or even let me finish sounds like a disclaimer. So it's about using much stronger language over the top. And I think Julia Gillard was particularly brilliant at the way she would do that. And so maybe use her, have a look at some of her speeches and the way that she commands that room. And yes, it is a very tricky situation, and I totally understand the undercutting and the undermining. I would certainly look at what language, and have a couple of those up your sleeve. Like what specific words can you use that actually keep you on track? And it could be, I was saying that, and it's just like you come back to, as I was saying. It could be something as simple as that. As I was saying, and you might have to talk over the top of them. Is that something that you feel would work for you?
Most likely, and you're right, because I think it's so easy to say that word just, or be, more polite.
Yes, and sometimes that politeness actually diminishes you, whereas you need to be direct.
I think, it's so easy to say, oh, forgive me, when you try to interject to them. But no,
Yeah.
thank you. No, I
And
appreciate
you might even say something like, I would like to add to that,
it.
rather than forgive me when you want to interject. I would
Yes.
like to add to that.
Yes.
And as I was saying, is another one
Yeah.
that you can interject yourself when, or rather, when somebody's interrupting you.
Yeah.
So let me know how that goes. I would love to know, because I do want to bring a workshop up to your area, because I think I know where you are. I want to bring a workshop up to your way later in the year, and I'll be tackling some of these trickier questions.
Oh, I would love
Thank you.
that.
So thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your question, and I will continue to reflect on that and see if I can come up with some other ones that would work for you as well.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Any other questions? I've gone a little over time, and I do want to honour the time that we have together. Any other questions from anyone? Let me
Oh
see.
my, yes. Oh, come back.
Okay, Karen.
Yes, yes. I was listening to the exchange just now, and I was wondering, how does one keep from digressing into that kind of defense mechanism that sometimes happens when you have someone that's diminishing or undermining or baiting or what is the other word I'm looking for? I'm at a loss, but please, can you share?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question too. I think we all suffer from, well, it's life, isn't it? There is always going to be someone who wants to tackle us. I think
Yes.
for me, I think one of the most important things is to have the courage of that conviction. And, these are not just words. This is about standing really strong in the conviction of what it is that you are saying. And for me, when I'm challenged, and as a theatre director, I often get challenged by the actors, because they'll have their own idea about how something should go, but I have this vision. And so sharing it from that perspective. So I have this vision, and I have shared the vision, but they're not in my head. So they don't necessarily know the trajectory that I'm working with. So one of the ways that I might approach that is to say something along the lines of, I appreciate your concern. However, so that would be how I would pitch it. I I can understand that this might feel different for you, or a challenge. This is particularly if I'm working with an actor who's finding something that I've shared. They're going, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't possibly do that. You're asking too much of me." So it'll be something like empathizing with them, and still standing strong in my own conviction that what I'm sharing is actually the road we need to go down. And that is that can be difficult when, say, you're in a challenging situation in a work environment where you've got to share bad news. So, empathy is really important in that situation. I would look at using words about understanding. I understand that this is a difficult thing for you at this moment. However, I'm here to support you through this. I will, one of the things I often will say to actors I'm working with is, I am not going to let you look foolish on stage. I remind them that I have their back. So that's some of the ways that I've managed those. Is that helpful for you?
Yes, very much so. Thank you so much. And I'm appreciating not only you, but everyone else's input. It's been wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So I think we are. Oh, yes, however, Alison, yes. However, it's a very useful word. It's better than the word but, I find. All right, so just to finish off, if this is something that you have found valuable, for a start, connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love that. However, am also offering a one-on-one session. It's 30 minutes. It's short, sharp, very focused, and we will focus on maybe some of the things that are challenging you at the moment around those signature speaking shifts. So if this is something that you would like to explore a little deeper, I normally only run much longer sessions as coaching sessions, but purely for this masterclass, I'm simply offering a 30-minute session to help you do a bit of a dive into some of these aspects and maybe finding better language around the way that you express yourself. So, and it'll help you also then kind of embody some of these changes that I've been talking about. So if this is of interest to you, you can actually book through that link on the screen at the moment. But if you don't see the slide, that might be a bit of a challenge, but I will share it with an email out to everybody as well. So thank you all for joining me. I just want to remind you that, your voice, when you fully claim it and you are fully aligned, then you are fully brilliant. So thank you so much for your time and sharing the space with me today. And yes, might see you up in your absolutely, Alison. My goal was to actually expand this into a half-day workshop, and it's called Voice of a Leader. And I think this would be beautiful to present up in your neck of the woods. I would love to do that. So yes, look forward to meeting you in person soon. And thank you very much for joining me live. It means the world to me to actually have real live people to speak with. So thank you. I loved having your company. And if there's anything I can do to help you, please do reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn very easily. And I'd love to connect with you if we're not already personally connected. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you online or in person again real soon. So thank you, and I will stop the recording now. Thank you and goodbye.